Again, in the last video we have created Odoo container and where we have mounted our custom add-ons as a volumes, but in this video I'll show you how you can build your own Docker image and how you can deploy it across your multiple environments without any error. So I'll show you how you can create your Odoo container with your custom add-ons and how you can create a Docker container or a Docker image and how you can push it to a centralized repository. But before we begin, let's understand the directory structure I've created for this project. So I've created two folders. One is to store Odoo file stores, config and database data, because we want to persist the information which is stored to a database. So that's why I've created two folders respectively. One is for config. As a part of this demo, I want to use my own Odoo configuration file, so that I've created one for Odoo config file, then one for a database data. Here you can see we have a database configuration file, and whatever you store to a database, that will come inside this db data folder. This will be used in stack.yaml file. We'll just go through that stack.yaml file in the later part of this video. And we have one folder for file store. As we know, Odoo requires a file store to store the JS and CSS file. So for that reason, I have created a folder called file store. So this is my first directory. Then the second directory is my actual project, where I've created a folder to store my custom modules. So the folder name itself is custom modules, and within this module I've added my custom module called a demo module. Along with that, I've added one file called docker file and requirement.txt. So I've included requirement.txt because we know that this is a Python application, and to run any application we need some external libraries to work with our application. So like any other application, I've created a requirement.txt where you can add all your dependent libraries or packages here, and you can install them inside your Docker container or inside your Odoo environment. So for this demo purpose, I've used a Celery. This is not required for Odoo. This is just for demo purpose. You can put n number of libraries here inside the requirement.txt file, and they'll get installed while building a Docker image or while creating a Docker image. Then we have a file called docker file. So let's understand what we have in the docker file. So this is a docker file which will look like, as I mentioned, we'll be using Odoo 14 as a base image. So I'll again use Odoo's base image for my Docker container. So this is my base image. Then I'll switch to root user because I want to install some Python libraries. I want to install Python and want to upgrade some dependent libraries. That's why I'll switch to user. Then I've set the environment variable. Then I've executed command to update my libraries and packages, and also I'll install the Python dev tool. So this is the command to execute that. So whenever a Docker file get executed, or whenever we execute a docker build command, this Docker file get executed. So as you can see, a Docker file is nothing but a list of commands which will get executed automatically to build a image for your Odoo application. And whenever this Docker file is being used, it executes these commands sequentially, and then and in the next part of your Docker file, we'll copy this requirement.txt inside the container. So once this is copied inside your image, then we'll execute this requirement.txt. So it will execute all the packages or library which are mentioned inside your requirement.txt, and then we'll switch to a normal user because we have already done all the installation part. So we'll switch to a Odoo user. Now a Docker daemon will execute a next command which will set our current working directory. So if you look at the implementation of Odoo's base image, so they have included all community add-ons inside a container, inside a folder called mnt/extra add-on. So this is a path which is available in your Odoo container already. So we'll check out to that. We'll switch to that path, and then we'll execute this copy command. So copy dot slash dot what it represent. So it will copy everything from your host machine from your current directory. So as this Docker file is located inside this project, so when this command get executed, whatever content you have inside your project directory, which is your custom add-ons, Docker file and requirement.txt file, all these files get copied inside your Docker image. So this is how you can copy your custom add-on inside the image. So once the execution is done, your image will be ready and you can deploy this image to run your application. But before we jump into the deployment, let's understand what we have inside the configuration file. So as I mentioned, for this demo purpose, I'm using a custom configuration file. Not custom, I want to use my own configuration file, which is present inside this odoo data config odoo.conf. So what we have in odoo.conf file, so I've explicitly mentioned add-ons path. As I mentioned, all the community add-ons of base image, they already are available at this mnt/extra add-on. Now when I execute this copy command, it will copy this custom module folder also inside the container. Now I want to set this add-on path when I start my Odoo application. That's why I've included my add-ons path as mnt/extra add-on, which is the base path for all the modules, and I've added this custom module, which is the basically a directory of all my custom modules. So I'll use this path to when I run my Odoo application. So also I mentioned the admin password, database port, database username, and database password. Here is one parameter called db host. So instead of localhost, I have given a db. So what it db represent, so that we'll see while we discuss the stack.yaml file. So this db represent a service which is available in your Docker network. So if you look at this stack.yaml file, first we have created one network called webnet, and this webnet network is used for both services. So this is my first service where I'm using, this is the first service of my Odoo, and I'm using image, which is my custom image. So we have not created this image yet, but yeah, first we'll discuss the stack.yaml file and we'll create image. So I'll use my own custom image, and then this service is depend on database. So database has to created first before my Odoo application run. Then I want to use a port number 8099, which will map with 8069 inside my container. So if you want to know about if you want to understand each and every bits of this stack.yaml file, please do check my last video. I'll put a link to that video in the description box. Cool. Then as an entry point, so whenever this container gets started, I want to install my base image because I'm executing this very first time, and I want to create a demo Odoo database. So this database created automatically, and inside this database my base module get installed. So as I mentioned, Odoo requires a config file and a file store. That's why I have mounted these two volumes for my Odoo application, and I've registered this Docker service in the network which I've created below. So the Odoo or the web service get deployed inside the webnet network. Similarly, I've created a service called database. So the communication between your Odoo application and database is happened via the service name called db. Why? Because both containers are deployed in the same network so that they can communicate with each other via their service name. That's why I've added a database host as db in my odoo.conf file. Cool. So this is about the stack.yaml file, but we have not created our own odoo image so far. So let's create that. So let me just go inside this project folder, and here you can see I have a Docker file which we discussed earlier. Now let's build a Docker image using command docker build. Then I have to pass one extra parameter. So this parameter is not required if you are using any Linux based system. So this is for the user who are using a MacBook system with M1 chipset, but if you are using Linux, then --platform Linux 36_64 is not required. So this is just for Mac users. Then I want to create a Docker image with name as my odoo image. So you can give any name. In my case, I'm using this as my image name because I've already used this image in my Docker stack file. So I'll give my image name as my odoo image, and then I want to use a Docker file. That's why I'll give a path as -f Docker file, and I want to build this image from this directory. That's why I'll put a dot, and please don't forget to put this dot at the end of this and at the end of your docker build command, and then click. Now your Docker daemon will execute the steps which are mentioned in your Docker file. It will execute them one by one, and it will create your Docker image. Perfect. So it executed successfully. If you check the Docker images now, so now my image is created, and here you can see it was created 37 minutes ago because I've created this earlier and I've not made any changes. So let me remove this image first. Yeah, cool. So I have no image name with my odoo image. So let me rebuild this. Perfect. So it says 38 minutes ago because I have not modified anything inside this Docker file. But yeah, in your scenario, the created will be like few seconds ago or something like that. Cool. So my image is available now. Now I can use this image to deploy my stack. So I'll check out a directory where I have stack file available. Now I can execute or I can deploy my odoo stack using command docker stack deploy -c then stack.yaml file, and I'll give my stack name as odoo. So once this is done, so as I mentioned, it will create a virtual network first, then it will add the services which are mentioned in your stack.yaml file, which is web and db. It will register those containers inside this network so that they can communicate with each other via their service name. Now you can check your container status using command docker service ls. Now here you can see both services are up and running. Both services as in one for odoo, one for your application. Now if you want to check the log, like what exactly happening inside your container, you can execute command docker service logs -- follow, and then you can pass your service name. Cool. So if you remember, we have mentioned the database name as demo odoo database, and also we have mentioned that I want to install a base module whenever I deploy my stack very first time. So here you can see the base module is started loading, and it successfully upgraded or loaded or installed all 7 modules which are installed using the base command. Now to verify that, I can go to localhost 8099. Why 8099? Because I mentioned here my application will expose 8099 for outside world, but it will map with 8069, which is odoo's default port, inside the Docker container. So yeah, my odoo application is up. I can use the default credential to log in into my system, and also meanwhile you can verify the logs. Yep, login successful, and the username was admin, and also it loaded some assets. Perfect, my application is now up and running. Now our objective was to create this Docker image for our custom add-ons. So if I remove this app filter and if I search my module name, which is demo module, cool, so this module is successfully added to my container, and I can install this module using my custom Docker image. So this is successfully installed. You can check this in logs also. So these are my odoo logs. Perfect, so my application has been installed. If I search for demo module here, now I can see the status is changed to install. Great, so now our application is up and running. So I'll also tell you the commands using which you can debug your container or debug your services. So let's suppose if you execute docker service ls after docker stack deploy command, if your service status is showing 0/1, it means something went wrong while deploying your services. And to debug that, you can execute command docker service ps -- no trunk, and then you can pass your service name, which is odoo web or odoo-db. So it will say while deploying this service it failed for few seconds, but automatically Swarm changed the container state from failed to running, and that's why we can see 1/1. It means all services are up and running. So if you are getting this 0/1 here, it means your container is not deployed successfully. So you can debug that container state using command docker service ps -- no trunk odoo web. And if you want to check the logs, I'll tell you again, which is docker service log -- follow, and then your service name, which is odoo web. So you can check the odoo application log. Cool, so now so far we have seen how we can build our own docker image using docker file, and how we can debug the container state. Now once you have this image available, and if you want to deploy the same image on multiple servers or instances, you have to push your docker image to central repository, and for that we can use docker hub repository. So before you push any image to a docker hub, you should have account created on this docker hub, and once you have that account created, you can log into docker hub via from CLI using command docker login. So as I've already logged into a system, so it will authenticate my existing credential, and it says a login successful, and I can execute any docker command from this terminal. Now to push a docker image or to deploy this docker image on multiple servers, first you have to tag your docker image with predefined format. So what is a predefined format for your docker image? So if you want to push your docker image to a central repository or docker hub, you should add your username as a prefix of your docker image. So in our case, our docker image name is my odoo image. So you can tag this docker image using command docker tag, then your image name my odoo image, then the tag is latest, and I want to push this image, but before that I have to tag this image as a in predefined format. So that's why you have to add, or you have to put your username first, then forward slash, then you have to give your image name, which is my odoo image. And let's suppose if you want to publish a first version, so you can tag this latest with v1.0.0. and if you do a docker images again, then you'll get one more image is created with a different tag, but this is a replica, or this is the exact copy of your original image which you have created using docker build command. And you can confirm this using this image id. So here you can see for both images you have same image id. It means whatever code or configuration you have in this image, they will be available inside this image. So once we have this image tagged with a proper name, you can push this image to Docker Hub. So if I go to Docker Hub, so I don't have any tags created, right? So docker push my username forward slash my image name, and I want to push the first version of our image. That's why I'll put my odoo image, then v1.0.0, and it pushed successfully. So if I refresh this page, now my docker image or my docker image and its respective tag is pushed to Docker Hub. So it's 1.0.0 and it is published a few seconds ago. Now you have your image ready and you have tested this on your local machine, and now if you want to deploy the same image on any other server, then you can just SSH into that server and execute command docker pull your username and your image name, which is my odoo image colon 1.0.0. So just remember that you have to execute this command from your server where you want to set up your odoo application. And before you pull this image, again you have to perform a login operation because you are pulling this image from a private repository. That's why the authentication is required over there. So yeah, on your instance you can perform docker login first, and then you can execute this docker pull command. So it will pull a docker image on your server, and then you can create a similar folder structure on your server, and you can execute a docker stack deploy command, which we have seen earlier, and then your odoo application will run on your server in just couple of minutes. So this is how we can build a docker image once, and we can reuse this image on a multiple environments without doing repetition of work, and this will reduce the number of errors while deploying or while setting up any environment for your odoo application. So yeah, this is all from my side, guys, and I hope you have learned about containerizing your own odoo application and how you can create your own image for your application. So thank you so much, and in the next video I'll tell you how you can deploy this image on multiple instances using CI/CD pipeline. So yeah, stay tuned, and thank you so much, guys. Have a good day.